middle base.
Yeah, but I think I'm missing a page. No, I'm not missing a page. Okay.
Somewhere, I will meet this because we will.
אבל הוא יתברך.
Right?
Right? אבל הוא יתברך בכבודו ועצמו. ודעת הקדוש ברוך הוא אינו כן. כי אני הוויה לא שניתי. We said yesterday that everything is a stage. The whole world is a stage to teach people justice. But because it's not the justice is the essence of Hashem. The essence of Hashem is unknowable. But he chose to create the world in such a way that it would demonstrate to us the importance of justice. So because of that, the human spirit is constantly seeking that. It's constantly for that. But God's measure is not like that. Because God doesn't change. There's no process. There's no kind of. There's nothing going on there in a certain sense. Okay? That's the only way we can describe it, as being constant, as being something that's unchanging. And as we've explained many, many times, that the human experience is one of change, and the godly experience is one of consistency. And this is, we didn't learn this mimer, but the week that I was in Austria, so I was learning a mimer by myself. And in that mimer, it suddenly hit me that when he says Kula kamei kolo chashiv, that everything before him is not, meaning that this whole reality is as if it's nothing, is not a description by Hashem. Hashem values it very much. Otherwise, it wouldn't create it. It doesn't make sense that you would say that. So it's not a question of value. Of course, he values it. So what do you mean Kula kamei kolo chashiv? So the simple explanation of Chassidus is you can't compare what goes on here, complex as it might be, to Hashem, because they're incommensurable. So it's as if, the truth is that Kula kamei kolo chashiv is something that we experience. What do you mean we experience? That the true nature of the soul, the true nature of reality, is not worth anything in this world. We don't give it value. Because we're so locked into the process, we're so locked into this changing reality, we don't see what the consistency really is. We can't value it properly. So even in ourselves, we can't recognize that part that's unchanging. And it's Kula kamei kolo chashiv, and it's as if it has no value. It's like that Kula kamei kolo chashiv is not something that's happening in Hashem. How do you know what's happening in Hashem? We're saying how it's reflected in us. That when we look, again, it's like flipping the picture. Again, the pshat of the picture is that it's like Hashem looking at the world that has no value to him. Mm-hmm. But that's very strange to say that. So you can flip the picture and say, what do I mean? How do I know this? Because when I look at him, it's as if it has no value. It's as if that consistent. Imagine somebody would just sit there, or it's like the way that we look at the world of the dead, or the deceased. They're not changing. They're not doing anything. So what are they worth? I believe they exist, but what are they doing? They're doing nothing. They're not moving anything. They're not creating change. They're not creating anything.
Yeah, but something's happening in Gan Eden.
Nothing's happening. That's the point. It's all frozen. Because without a body, everything is frozen. It's the body that gives the quality of change. Without the body, you don't have that. The soul doesn't understand what change is without it. We said yesterday that once a soul is integrated into the body, it enters into the body, it realizes that this is more important than everything it's done so far. So it realizes, okay, from now on it's touched by change. It's touched by what the body can do and the soul by itself can't do. And it always wants to be in the body because it's an opportunity to change something. It's very interesting that euthanasia, because people think that life is not worth living anymore. Because it's very painful, it's very difficult. Okay, but you're right that the moment that you'll leave the body, everything will go away. All the all the pain and suffering will go away. But think about it as, but from that moment on, you won't be able to change anything. Who said that it'll be better? It might be that you're going into a world of different, not pain, but frustration that will drive you nuts, where you can't change anything. So who says it's not so clear? In the end, yes, it's good because, right, you don't have to change anything.
Temporary relief.
Okay, it's temporary relief, but I don't know if it's very lasting relief. In any case, once you're touched by change, you feel that the opposite is not worth anything, as long as you're healthy, right? ודקולו כמי כלא חשיב, וחיות ושפע שמשפיע על העולמות העליונים התחתונים מבחינת מלך בלבד, לאחזה בלבד. And so, again, this is the classic understanding that everything that we see here is a show. And why is this show? Because he wants to be a king. This drama is going on because he wants to show you that he's a king. But he only wants to show you. It's not because that's his essence. His essence is not to be a king. He wanted to be a king. שעליו נאמר, המשפילי לראות בשמיים והארץ. And that's what it means that Hashem says, I'm lowered into the heavens and the earth, and in order to show the heavens and the earth. Lirot b'shamayim v'aretz is for me to see, but really what he means here is that I'm showing you the heavens of the earth, and to do that, I have to lower myself from my real essence. שמצד עצמותו ומהותו יתברך כתיב כי כל בשמיים והארץ, ששמיים והארץ שווים לפניו. Because as far as Hashem is concerned, heaven and earth is the same thing. There's no difference between them. It doesn't make any difference. לפי שלא שייך לפניו יתברך מעלה ומטה כלל, because up and down doesn't mean anything by Hashem. It's all the same. אלא שהוא המשפילי בירידה גדולה וצמצום גדול שיתהווה בחינת שמיים. But he lowers himself down into this reality in order to show us a heaven. There is such a thing called a heaven. ופירוש שמיים, שמיים, כי מים הוא ים החוכמה, ולהיות התלבשות אור אינסוף ברוך הוא בחוכמה, ירידה אצלו. And another hint that he says here, again, it has a deeper meaning behind it, but as a hint, it's very simple. He says, Shamayim, what does Shamayim mean? Rashi says that there's water. Water is wisdom, he says. So he says, we consider heaven to be a place of wisdom. Okay? We hold wisdom in high esteem. But it's not because by Hashem, wisdom is more important than the opposite. It's not. It's not more important. They're equal. Wisdom and folly, as far as Hashem is concerned, they're both meaningless.
Our wisdom, our folly.
Even what he would call wisdom doesn't matter, because anything that he would show me, anything that I could experience, even if he would show me his own, it would still be limited by my perception. So in that sense, you're right. And it's just a show. It's just something to teach me. So he's the great teacher. He's really conducting a simulation in a sense. It's not a simulation in the sense that it's not real. It's real. But to choose that these would be the parameters that the souls would have to deal with, that's a tremendous limitation of his abilities. Because he's limitless. So to have a wisdom, to have a heaven, meaning to have wisdom, that's a lowering for him. Ki kulam b'chokhmah asita, she נחשבת כעשייה גשמית. Like we always say, that you've created them all with wisdom, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, and so wisdom for him is like action for me. I have to lower myself from my thoughts in order to begin to act. וירידה והשפלה זו על ידי בחינת שמיים, תורה שבכתב וארץ, מבחינת תורה שבעל פה, שהם כללות כל התורה והמצוות. ואנו יודעי התורה והמצוות שאדם עושה למטה, על ידי תירותא דתתא, תירותא דלילה. And what does it mean that he lowered himself into the heavens and the earth? Heavens and the earth, he says here, are also the written Torah is the heavens, and the oral Torah, the oral tradition, is the earth. And basically, by a person doing mitzvos below, he's creating an awakening above. Meaning he's making it interesting for Hashem. He's making it that his will was performed, that he's the king and he's able to command, and people follow it. So therefore, it's interesting to create the world. כמו שכתוב, אשר יעשה אותם האדם, פירוש על דרך מה שכתוב, ועשיתם אתם כתיב, שאדם עושה אותן למצוות וחי בהם, שממשיך בהם מבחינת חיים וחיי החיים ברוך הוא. Now he says, if it's that way, then without man finishing the purpose of creation is not worth anything.
Creation was for the sake of man.
No, that's not what he's saying here. He's saying creation was for the sake of Hashem being a king and being able to command. That was the purpose.
But for that you need man.
Aye, for that you need man, but the creation wasn't for that. For that, one of the conditions is that you need to have somebody who will follow the rule of law. In a certain sense, a democracy is built on the same concept. Does democracy come to serve the people, or the people serve the democracy? It's not. You a little bit can ask it in democracy just as much as you could ask it in a monarchy. In a monarchy, there's no question that the monarch has no interest in ruling if there's no people to rule. What's he gonna do? Just sit there all day and think about his kingdom? There's no kingdom. What are you gonna think? You're not a king unless you have a kingdom. But even democracy is like that, because we tend to think that democracy is for the people. It comes to serve us, and then man is in the center. But we see that it's not that way, because you see that even democracies, in certain situations, they're not there for the citizen. They're there to propagate themselves. They're there to ensure their existence. Because if it was true that a democracy, for instance, would be interested only in the citizen, and free speech is one of the rights that you want to give citizens, so it wouldn't have a problem with somebody who comes and says, I'm running for the parliament with the express purpose of ending the democracy. No, they don't allow that. Why don't you allow it? Because we're not here for you. In the end, we're here to propagate democracy. We're here to propagate ourselves. And that's the thinking in the end. So in any case, everybody, in whatever form of government I think that you look at, in the end, the people are not the reason, they're the condition. You need them in order to keep it going. But they're not the purpose of the government. It's not the real purpose. Anyway, we can argue about this, but I think that it's true about democracies as well. So what does it mean?
Democracies are going to disappear in the machine.
What?
Democracies will disappear in the machine.
Why?
It's just like communism, for instance. Democracy reform.
Why? Why would it disappear?
But it's basically false.
Why is it basically false? I don't know.
Because it serves the interests of the people who are running it, not the interests of the people who are...
No, now you're saying that they're corrupted, so they need to be cleaned up. Why would you say that it's false?
Maybe the idea itself, but what's taking place is...
No, so the people who come and say that the idea itself is false, like you just said. Because they come and say that the purpose of democracy is to put man in the center. I don't think that's true. That's what I'm arguing.
As far as Yiddishkeit is concerned, the democracy is false.
Why?
We're all going to vote that from now on the Israelim are going to be the Kohanim instead of the Kohanim. Okay. 70% of the people say yes. You can't change that. That's not the way Hashem created.
Why? If the Sanhedrin decides to change it, that's exactly what's going to happen.
No, somebody's born as a Kohen. It's a Kohen.
No, if we decide that Levim from now on are Kohanim, the Kohanim from now on are like Levim, what's the problem?
You can't change what's written in the Torah.
Not changing
You
it.
can't have a democratic vote. And say
You're
from now on-
reinterpreting it.
From now on, it's permitted to eat chazir. You can't do that.
But that's apparently exactly what people imagine will happen.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly wrong, because it's not a viable interpretation. And what the Medrash is saying is a Medrash. It's saying that the pig will come back. It means that Esav will come back. That's what it means. Because he for some reason that's their symbol. I don't know why. But it's a Medrash. It's not a halacha. Anyway, even though it says there chidush halacha. But I think that it's chidush Torah. It says, I don't remember if it says chidush halacha, But in any case, it's like what we say, halacha esav soneh leYaakov. What do you mean it's halacha? You have to say a bracha before he... What do you mean it's a halacha? Halacha means sometimes the way this is like ingrained into reality. So there'll be a chidush Torah. What do you mean a chidush Torah? It won't be ingrained into reality anymore. Having a Sanhedrin is a key. Really, in the end, when you have a Sanhedrin, what you're doing is you're saying, what you're saying here, that when we do what Hashem wants, so He gives us the keys. So He says here, take the keys to a certain extent. Again, people will have a tough time with this because it is a difficult sugya. I don't know that it's so simple, but people have this picture in their mind that when the Sanhedrin comes, you can change everything. You can change most of what's going on. I don't know. It's a very complex question. Can the Sanhedrin really change everything? Like you say, what if they go against the Meforish Pasuk? But there's no such thing as going against the Meforish Pasuk because they reinterpret it. What does that exactly mean? That you go against the pasuk? Half the Talmud is going theoretically against a pasuk because they have a different reading of it. They understand it in a different way. Again, they have reasoning for it. They're not just pulling rabbits out of a hat, but there's reasoning. But there's a lot of reasoning that you can find for many things. So I don't know how much will stay the same way. I don't know. I'm getting into topics that are too controversial to discuss. So again, it's man that gives life to the world in the end. Why? Because he awakens in God the will to rule, to make the world. By doing what? By performing his commandments, by performing his will. Imagine, getting back to this thing, imagine now the Sanhedrin would say, what Hashem wants is A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. I know that it sounds to you different than what it says in the Chumash, but I'm telling you, this is what He wants. Are you performing His will or not? I think you are. Because you come and say, settle, we have a way of defining what Hashem wants, and He's entrusted the interpretation in the hands of man, and like He said with Moshe Rabbeinu, even if he changes it, I agree. Right? To the Malachim, He said, even if he changes what I said, I agree with him beforehand. Why? Because I've been trusted. I trust him. He's trustworthy in my entire house. He's my servant. So the same thing is with the Sanhedrin. They come and say, this is what Hashem wants. And you come and say, settle. I'm going to do what Hashem wants. You're okay. They may have made a mistake. But that's exactly what it means here. Atem afilu shogegim. Even if you may. Atem afilu mezidim. Even if you do it on purpose and you change it on purpose. There's a lot of power in the hands of man. Why? Because in the end, that's what Hashem wants. He wants a human being that will do what He says to do. That's what it means that we do the will. It really translates into we make the will of the Creator. What do you mean you make the will? Because without man following Hashem's commandments, there's no will above. There's no will for the world. There's no world, meaning space, if there's no action below making space worthy, worthwhile for Hashem. And because of that, He's given a lot of power, so that the tzaddik can even make a decree. Why? Because He's saying, he follows what I say. So if he follows what I say, so he's really the reason for which I created the world. In general, Hashem's will is divided into three. So from these, Torah, service, and acts of loving kindness, from these come what we call the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And when we say Elokei, the God of the Shon Tzimtzum V'Yirida, שיורד ומשפיל את עצמו להיות בחינת אלוקות שרואה ומתגלה בעמדת אברהם ויצחק. And through these actions, Hashem becomes revealed. So just to say another thing, we saw before Panim Bepanim, which is Tafshin Pei Bes, Panim Bepanim, right? Mm-hmm. And now we just saw, we didn't know we saw, but we did. We just saw a gematria of Tafshin Pei Bes.
Yeah.
Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov is equal to Tafshin Pei Bes. Yeah, it's the second mention of 782 this coming year in this mimer. Amazing thing, no? So he says, what does it mean? It means that by doing mitzvos, you make Hashem into the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, which means that you make him a God who wants Torah, avoda, service, and acts of loving kindness. So that's what we have today.
Teitzei, sure.